for InDesign. All right, so welcome back to our session on InDesign. Cassie, you have the floor now.
Okay. Do I have screen share capabilities today? Do you know? Do we need to set that up? Because I can talk while you do that.
You should be good now.
Okay, should be good. Okay. Oh, yep. Okay, perfect. Look, the whole bar changes. Okay, so first I'm gonna sincerely apologize because today at 1 o'clock seems to be chaos in my house. My daughter is on Zoom with her classroom. My son is on Zoom with his a group project because he's in 4th grade. So if I get interrupted, I sincerely apologize. I told them not to come downstairs, but I don't know. They're 10 and 8, so they kind of do their own thing sometimes. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so you guys can follow along. So the first thing that so we're gonna do InDesign 101 today. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk you guys through how to create this flyer that I kind of mocked up this morning. Very similar to something we might design. I did base the design for this flyer on a branding template that's provided to us through that branding site that I showed you guys the other day. But you'll see that it's different. It's kind of got like its own graphic touch to it that I've changed, where I've added this orange box because I wanted to call out the information as opposed to this. So the nice thing about the templates is they give you a place to start, but you can definitely add your own elements to things. So it's not as restrictive when you kind of just base it on the templates and create your own thing, which is what we're going to do today. Because if I had you just work in the templates, you wouldn't really learn a lot because everything's already there, and I want you guys to know how to place graphics and kind of how to work your way around InDesign and the toolbar and all that. The other thing is, well, 2 things. One, your screen may look different than mine today, but I will try to help everyone kind of know where to go to get things. The challenge with, not really challenge, the great thing about graphic design software is you can set up your screen, in a sense, your tools and things like that, how you want them to be set up. So mine have some of my preferences set on them and yours may not. So I'll try to help with that as well. And then 2, everything in graphic design can be done 6 different ways. So if you know how to do something already and I do it a different way, it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong or that I'm doing it wrong or you're right or anything like that. There's all different ways that you can do things. So I really just want everybody to kind of explore the options that InDesign provides and not get stuck on the nitty-gritty of exactly how we got to where we got to, because there's lots of different ways to do that. So if you don't already have InDesign open on your computer, if you go down to the search bar in the bottom left-hand corner, yes, I had to think about what direction that was. That's where I'm at today. And you can type in NDE, and it should bring up the Adobe InDesign app if you installed it. If you didn't install it, you can still follow along today and kind of watch, and then go back hopefully with the recording and try to follow along once you have it installed. And Danae, they should be able to have both windows open, right? So they can follow the tutorial. Do you want to explain that to them real quick? Because we talked about that the other day.
Yes, so if you would like to follow along with Cassie and have like InDesign open and then also have your Zoom session open simultaneously, you'll need to get out of full screen of Zoom. So typically by default, when somebody screen shares, your Zoom screen probably blows up and takes up the entire screen. You should just be able to hit escape and it should take you out of full screen mode. You can also go up to the top of your screen and do view options, and then you should be able to get out of full screen mode that way as well. And from there, you can change the size of your screen. Some of you might be working with dual monitors, so you can have Zoom on one screen and your InDesign on the other one. I do see some people asking too where to download Adobe Creative Cloud. I did put the link in the chat box to our website. There's a little snippet that says Adobe Creative Cloud download. If you follow those instructions, that's how you will download the application onto your computer. And from there, you'll have access to all of the Adobe Creative Cloud products, including InDesign.
Hey, dual monitors is killing me too here at home, because as a designer, I use them a lot. I just don't have the space to set them up here at home. So aside from opening InDesign, the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna take everyone to the branding website for CFAS, because we're gonna need to download the logo and the tag or the bug. So I'm gonna walk you through kind of what that process looks like as well. So that website, I'm gonna copy and paste it in here. Okay. And so if you pull up that website, and I will try to go as slow as I can, although sometimes when you think through this stuff, it's kind of, you slow down and then I start to forget. When you go to that website, the first thing we're gonna do is hit the logo. So we need to design the logo, or not design the logo, we need to download the logo. And when you're in the logos, you're gonna scroll down, and this is actually a hyperlink for download logo resources. And that will take you to Box. So if you're not already signed into Box for today, you will need to do your Duo Mobile and sign into Box. How do you open Portal Manager?
So Portal Manager is an application that should be on Windows computers. On a Mac, it's called Self-Service, and it basically is an application through which you can access and download any enterprise tools. On a Windows computer, I honestly no longer know how to use PCs because I've been on an Apple platform for so long. So I don't know how you do like a general search on a PC. So if somebody could just start typing it into your start menu. So if you type,
Right here.
thank you, Stacy. Yes, there you can show it. So just start typing it into there. If you don't have Portal Manager, you should just be able to log into self-service online, like the IT self-service website. And I think that link was on our website. Maybe it wasn't. I will say for the purpose of this session, if you do not already have Creative Cloud installed on your computer, you probably just want to pay attention to Cassie for now.
Yes.
And then you can come back to the playback because it's going to take some time to download on your computer. It could take, depending on your internet connection, it could take like 15, 20, 30 minutes to get this program installed on your computer. So if you don't already have it installed, don't worry about that right now.
Yep. Okay. All right. So that should have given you guys time to access Buckeye Box. And so what happens when you go into Buckeye Box is they have these categorized by types of logos that you would need, which for those of you who aren't graphic designers is actually somewhat of a challenging way to navigate these files. So RGB stands for red, green, blue. That's the color code for web files. So these RGB logos are logos that we would use if we were designing something for the web. In my case today, we're designing a flyer, which would be something you would print. And so we're gonna pop down as CMYK. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Those are the colors that printers use. And so we want to make sure that we use those files because what happens is the printer will actually read that as how much cyan, how much magenta, how much yellow, and how much black ink they need to lay down to get the appropriate color combination. So if you happen to use a web-based image in a print document, it will be okay. But it just might, you might notice that the color is off or not what, doesn't fall in line with the colors that you think it's going to be because the printer actually has to make the determination on what those color amounts are as opposed to the file kind of telling it what it needs. So we're gonna hop into the CMYK folder and we're gonna hit the EPS folder. EPS is a file type. It's a vectorized file type. It's very similar to an image file type and it's something that the graphics programs are all familiar with. For our flyer, we're going to do the horizontal logo. So I'm sure many of you know we have different logo versions depending on what we're using them for. And then they have several options for you guys. So don't get overwhelmed by this. What this means is, so 2C stands for 2 color, 1C stands for 1 color. So this is if, in some cases, we might be printing things that are black and white. If we know we're going to print it in black and white, then it's probably better that we use a 1 color gray or a 1 color black logo because we are not going to be able to print in red. There's also a 1 color scarlet if you're just going to print everything in scarlet. We are going to do 2 color horizontal CMYK. So this is the full color logo in 2 color. You'll also see a couple of these say REV. That stands for reverse. So what that means is the logo is lighter than the background that you're putting it on. So this would be if you're dropping a logo onto a black or gray background and you want it to be white, that's what those reverse logos are gonna be for. In this case, you're gonna wanna find the CFAS logo 2C horizontal CMYK. And that is a mouthful. Box does not preview files for EPS or InDesign because these are special graphics files, but we're just gonna go ahead and hit download. For me, I just have my downloads automatically go to my downloads folder. Some of you might get a window that asks you to save it in a certain place. So just try to save that somewhere where you know it's gonna be, because we are gonna have to reference that folder here in just a few minutes. And I'm gonna close out of that one. And then the only other thing we need is the tag. So we're gonna go back to the branding site, CFAES tag, and download tag resources. That's gonna make me do all this. Shouldn't have closed out of that window. All right, and we're back to our lovely acronyms of CMYK and RGB. So again, CMYK is print, RGB is web. In this case, it gives me the option for Illustrator, which is another graphic design program, or EPS. Unless you know how to use Illustrator, I would stick with EPS. And then again, all those options for different things. This is really, it can be overwhelming, but it's nice that the branding team gives you so many options because it really creates flexibility. So for us, we need the long tag bottom Scarlet CMYK. So for me, it shows up at the top, but it's going to be the longer tag. So if I jump back to my image, this is the long tag. The CFAES is at the bottom. CMYK, and we're going to download that. And that's all the elements I'm going to make you guys download today, because that's a lot of work. All right. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to go to InDesign, and many of you, I already had it pulled up on my computer. Many of you, when you open it up, should get a window that looks like this. This is a new document window. And this is the first step in where people go, I have no idea what to do, because look at all this. Some of you may already have your units set to inches. Some may be in millimeters, centimeters, depending on what you've done. But what this does is this allows you to go ahead and start setting up your file. So since we think in inches, at least I do, I'm gonna go ahead and change my units to inches. I'm gonna call this tutorial flyer, so you can go ahead and put the file name right there in the document setup. And the width, so a standard piece of paper is 8.5 inches by 11 inches. If for some reason you ever have this not set to inches, the cool thing about InDesign is if I put 8.5 in, it will make the conversion to picas or millimeters or whatever I put in there. So 8.5 by 11. Our orientation is going to be portrait. We're going to do 1 page, but if you wanted to, you could put 10, 16, however many pages, and it will automatically put all those pages down in the file. Facing pages is something that is used commonly for documents that you're creating that are multiple pages. What that does is it takes each 8.5 by 11 page, like you would read a book, and it puts them side by side. That way, if you have a design that goes across pages, if you think like a magazine layout, how like images will go across both pages, from a design standpoint, it allows you to do that. In this case, since we're just doing 1 page, there's no reason to have facing pages, so I'm just gonna uncheck mark that. And if you're ever creating something where you're not really designing across the layouts, I would just uncheck that, because if not, it'll confuse you, because it has like 1 page is actually 2 pages. I'm gonna do 2 columns, and I'm gonna make my column gutter 0.5 inches. The gutter is the space between the columns. So that's where we talked about the white space on Tuesday and the importance of white space. So we're gonna make sure we have a white space between our 2 columns so our words don't overlap. And then I'm also gonna set all my margins at 1/2 inch too. You'll see at the bottom a setting that says bleed and slug. This is for printing. So if you were taking your document to a press, Bleed refers to anything that comes off the edges of the page. So it's kind of bleed and slug has to do with the cut lines. As a designer, you might design beyond the actual edges of the page. That way when they cut it down, you don't get what we call white leak, which is an area where the ink didn't get to because the graphic wasn't pulled all the way out. So you don't even need to worry about bleed and slug unless you're starting to work with Uniprint and getting really fancy, which at that point, we'll have to have 102, 103, and 104 sessions. So, and then you're gonna hit create. And that should bring up something like this. You should see a purple box all the way around with some lines in the middle that represent your columns. Those do not print on your document. So a great thing about InDesign, and what we're gonna kind of play with right now, is it has this preview button over here. So on your toolbar might be 1 row instead of 2. I have mine set up in Tool. But at the bottom, and the awesome thing about InDesign too is if you hover over anything with your mouse, it'll tell you what that is. So if you ever wonder like, what is this tool or what does it do? If you hover over it, it'll kind of give you an idea. At the bottom, you'll see a normal window view, and then you'll also see a preview square. And when you hit that preview square, it takes all those what we call guidelines away, or margin lines, so that you can see what your document is actually going to look like when you print it. So let me go back here and show you guys. So here's what my document looks like created. And then when I hit that preview, here's what it looks like print. Created, print, created, print. So that's a cool little feature that allows you to just simply go, okay, what's it look like when I print it, and gets rid of all those guidelines. The other adjustment we're going to want to make real quick before we get started is if you go to View and Display Performance, if anybody's ever used InDesign and noticed that like your graphics don't look very crisp or clear when you're designing, it's actually because InDesign defaults to a typical display performance, but if you want to see it as a high quality, you can change that to a high quality display. I always do that. Here's my existing document. If I went back to, oh no, that one's in typical. So if I go to high quality, if you noticed, it changed it a little bit. So my image is actually showing up what it would print like, as opposed to a typical display where it's going to pixelate my image out a little bit, or a fast display. Now, if your computer is struggling because of memory or hardware or RAM or anything like that, that's something that you can adjust back that will not use as much processing space in your computer to work. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to place those elements that I had you guys download. So for InDesign, in order to get an image into a document, you go to File, Place. So Place stands for Insert in Microsoft Word. And when you hit Place, you're going to go find the document, we'll start with the bug or tag. So we're going to place the tag. Oh no, I downloaded the wrong one. Okay, that's okay. We can use this one too for our design. And then you're gonna place it in there, and you will see that it automatically defaults to the size of the file. Now, in our case, let's say, I don't want it to be that big. I want to change the size of it. And a lot of people in InDesign will go like this. And then they're like, wait, what? It cut it off. Like, I can't now. Like, why did it do that? So InDesign actually works or thinks like a picture frame. This is the best way I can describe it to you, is your image is in a frame. So think of a picture in a picture frame. So when I just adjust this square, it adjusts the size of my picture frame, but it doesn't adjust the size of the picture in the frame. And so it cuts it out. So you actually have to think of it like 2 layers of items here. So if I want to change the size of both the frame and the picture at the same time, you go over here to your free transform tool, which looks like a square with a bunch of little dots on it and a white little arrow in the left-hand corner. While you have the image selected, so make sure the image is selected, I'm going to hit that free transform tool. And then when I change it, it'll change the size according to how I do it. Now, you'll notice, and you'll see sometimes where people will skew things like I have just now on my screen, right? We've all seen the logos squished, stretched, whatever it may be. To prevent that, when you free transform something, if you hold shift down, it will not allow you to skew it. It keeps it in proportion. So as you hold shift and move that box around, it'll make it so that it's a fail safe. You can't skew it, right? And then you let go and it resizes it. So for now, I'm just gonna leave that at that size, or about half of a column size. We can adjust that later if we think our design sees fit. So we're gonna do the same thing with the logo. File, place. Go find my logo. Hopefully I downloaded the right logo. All right. And when I place my logo, it ends up way, way bigger than I want it to be. We actually just want it to go across one column. So again, I'm gonna hit my free transform tool. Hold shift so I don't skew the logo. Kind of line it up with, I didn't like that. There we go. Kind of line it up with the columns. Remember we talked about the importance of alignment the other day. So that's why those guidelines are there, to help you line it up. Okay. And then I'm going to move it and just move it down to the bottom. So this tool is your basic move or selection tool here. And you can just move things around. Now, if you click on this in the center, it changes your tool to a hand. What the hand does is allows you to move the picture in the frame. So now my picture's up here, but my picture frame is down here. Not what we want. Right? So if your picture ever disappears, it's because you clicked the center and you had the brown box instead of the blue box. Blue is the frame, brown is the picture. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna draw our gray box at the tops. I think they call that a banner across the top. And so for me, I want to make sure that sorry, I'm stepping ahead on you guys. I want to make sure that my gray box is just a little bit above my CFAES and a little bit below my CFAES. If you look at the templates that they provide to us, in most cases, that gray box is just a little bit bigger than the CFAES. Actually, on the bottom, it might, no, it's still a little bit bigger. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna draw out guidelines. Now, this is one of my favorite features of InDesign because it really helps with alignment. So if you do not see a ruler, it may be because your ruler is hidden in your view. So go to View and Show Rulers, or Control R is the shortcut for that. Once you have your ruler showing, if you click the frame, so the picture. So are you, Amanda, are you talking about like if you did this, is there a way to get it back quickly? I assume? Like, is there a way to find, okay, yes, there is. So you will go to Object, Fitting, and then Fill Frame Proportionally. Yeah, Control Z, yes, Debbie, that works too. But if you somehow lost it and it wasn't the last action that you did, again, I'll do that again. Object, Fitting, and whoops, I don't have my box selected. Fill frame proportionally, or fit content, or fit frame to no, not fit frame to content. Fill frame proportionally is what you want. And that'll automatically scoot it right back into that frame. Because I agree with you, sometimes you can like drag that out and then you don't have any idea where it went on your page. All right. Okay, good. Okay, so with your ruler, you can actually click on your ruler and drag. And when you click on your ruler and drag, it drags out what we call a guideline. And the guideline is just that invisible blue line that I talked about on Tuesday, where it's something where I need it so that I can line things up, but I don't want it to print on my document. And you can drag as many of these out as you want. By the way, I'm zooming in and zooming out quickly by holding Control plus or Control minus. So very similar to on our computers in general. Control plus, Control minus allows me to zoom in and out quickly. And if I ever want to just go back to fitting it right in my screen, you can go to View, Fit Page and Window, and it'll fit it right back to my screen. So I'm going to drag out two guidelines to just about where I think that gray box should go in my bug so that I can line it up. And once I have those two guidelines, then I'm going to go over here to the rectangle tool. Now, this is not the free transform tool. This is not the gradient tool. This is not the rectangle frame tool. It's the rectangle tool. And it's important that you actually use this shape tool because that's what we're going to need in order to make the box gray. And I'm going to drag it out. Actually, if you notice on our guide, the bug is inset a little bit from the gray box. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and drag the gray box, and I'm going to make it line up with those guidelines, and they're going to help me know exactly where my gray box needs to go. So I'm going to drag out that box. And I'm not sure what your guys' default is set to, but for me, my default is set to a black stroke on that box with no fill. Over here on the left-hand side at the bottom of the toolbox is two swatches. That's what we call those, swatches. There's a fill swatch and a stroke swatch. So you'll see my fill swatch has a red line through it right now, which means no color. My stroke swatch has black, which means I have a black stroke on that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this around. So I'm going to click on the stroke swatch. Click on that so that it's the one in the front. And then I'm going to click down here that I apply none. I don't want a stroke on my box because I just want a gray box. And then I'm going to go back and click on my fill box, and we're going to make this gray. Now, I'm going to reference, and this isn't something that you guys have to do as much as I'm going to show you, but the other day when we talked about color, we talked about how the brand has colors. On the CFAS branding website, when you go to color, it gives you the color palette. Now, the challenging thing is that when it gives you this color palette, it gives it to you in what we call Pantone swatches, which are color accurate swatches. They actually make inks for printers that are specifically these colors. But what we need is we need it set in CMYK because that's what we're working in, is CMYK. There's a link right here to Ohio State's extended color palette that gives you the CMYK color codes for every color in the branding palette right here. So what we can do, and this is where it's really helpful to have a piece of paper and a pencil next to you when you're designing, because literally my husband knows what CMYK colors are because he finds notes all over our house with these number codes on them, and he's like, what is this mess? So for us, I want to choose a 70% gray. I don't want it to be the darker gray, and you can use any of these colors in any of these. I love this little thing that Ohio State does here. So I'm going to choose a 70% tint of gray, and that color code for CMYK is 40, 33, 34, and 10. Okay, so you just need to remember those numbers, 40, 33, 34, and 10. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to double click, and right here, CMYK, I'm going to put those numbers in, 40, 33, 34, and 10. And what that's going to do is make that box that color gray that we wanted. And it is the correct brand color. The other thing that does is make it so that the box blocks out the tag because we put the box in after we put the tag in. So to arrange objects, which is something you've probably done in Microsoft Word, you're going to go up to the top to Object and then Arrange, and you're going to send it to the back. So I sent it to the back, so now they're in order the way I want them. And I'm actually, just because I am, I'm going to go ahead and inset this a little bit because, like I said, we noticed on our branding tutorial that it's in just a little bit. And I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. All right, before I move on, are there any questions about that, where we've gotten so far?
Now that you made your tag smaller, should you also adjust the size of your gray band? Because isn't it supposed to be the size of the font of the CFA? Yes.
Yep, you can. So you can drag this little guide up just a little bit, or if you click on the guide and then use your up arrow, that's how you get it to move very, very slowly, or, you know, in small increments. And then we can adjust that box right back up to that guide.
Thanks.
So that it fits. Yep, thank you. Are there specific guidelines for tag size, bar size, position on page? I am going to assume yes, but I do not know what they are.
So I think for tag size, what I've heard from the brand approval team is that it should be half the width of your logo. I don't know if Cheryl's still on and can speak to that, or anybody else.
I've not heard that size wise. My understanding is, yeah, you should grab both items at the same time and size them proportionately together. But obviously that's not that's not always the case. I don't know.
I've also heard that, Danae.
That's what they told me last time I submitted something.
Yeah.
I've not gotten that question.
Here's the rules for it.
Yeah, it doesn't say. The one thing I will say here is notice how one of those rules says you cannot create your own tag. We see that a lot across extension pages where people have created their own secondary tag with like their county name. This is not in line with brand standards, and you will be called out for it by the brand team. So don't do that.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Right. Yeah.
And like county, and the county name never goes in that gray bar, and yet I've seen it now on one of the, like an event invitation template, and I'm gonna have them remove that.
So
that's not.
That's the thing, Cheryl. I noticed that today. This is a template that I actually downloaded, and it says county name here in
their handout. Their actual flyer template doesn't have that on it, unless it's maybe on the InDesign file.
Right here, the 2019 4-H brand flyer InDesign. That's
okay, so
exactly
the
what I downloaded.
One, yeah, and that needs to be removed.
Yeah.
So I'll have them fix that.
Yeah, and we're kind of breaking. So I had you guys download the wrong bug, so that's totally my fault. We're kind of breaking brand right there, anyways. That should be this one, but I don't want to have to go back and have everyone re-download that. So this one actually is supposed to be first at the bottom. So it's supposed to come up from the bottom. So the idea is that that's extra space, right? I think, Cheryl, is that correct?
Yeah, and this is a good example of why, even if you take unless you do not adjust a template at all, your job when you're done with a flyer, handout, anything is to send the document back by brand approval team, and they'll catch that kind of thing. So if you don't know for sure, they will catch it, but that's why we send that stuff back. Too.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything that I've done or designed, like even me as a designer, I send to branding. And something that people should know too is like for the ESP awards, any of the Creative Works awards through JSEP or anything like that, if you don't have the brand approval for any of those Creative Works awards, you're not eligible for them. So it's really important if you're going to start getting into creating things, that you get that brand approval, even so that you can benefit from it on your Vita and Creative Works awards and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this is just really a precursor for you to learn InDesign, not so much as like for, don't take this and use it, because I tried to come up with elements to teach you how to use InDesign more than anything. Okay, so let's keep going. So the next thing we need to do for our banner across the top there is add the Ohio State University extension text in there. And like Cheryl said, there's really not a need for you guys to recreate this stuff from the template, but I felt like just having you use the template didn't really help you learn the program. So.
Absolutely, I'm totally in agreement with you, Cass.
yeah, it kind of, I emailed Danae this morning and I was like, it kind of defeats the purpose if I have them use a template, because they can just like add their stuff and they're not actually learning the program. So
exactly.
Okay. All right. So you're gonna, I did that without explaining what I was doing, so I'm gonna delete that. All right. So the text tool, which is the type tool, has a T. allows you to drag out a text box. So it's just like Microsoft Word, you're dragging out a text box, and you can type in that text box. Now you'll notice when you drag it out, you may or may not have a window that comes up that is where you would put your font and all that kind of stuff in it. If you do not, it may be on the right-hand side in your right-hand side toolbar. I have lots of things here because mine's set up with lots of things, but it's called the character window or palette. And if you still don't see it, if you go to the top to window, type in tables, and then character, it should pull it up there so that you have it. And this is going to allow you to set all those good things that we talked about the other day. So the font across the top is supposed to be that Proxima Nova. I actually think it's semi-bold. So Proxima Nova, semi-bold, 12 point. All these other things are fancy design things. This changes the space between your letters. This changes the space, your line spacing. So this is like, your one, double space, triple space. This will change the height of your letters. This will change the width of your letters. These are things that I don't anticipate you guys messing with too much because that you're really getting into some design when you mess with those things. And then over here is the color of your text. Now, I'm not going to change the color of my text yet because white on white means you can't see it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to type Ohio State University Extension. You guys can type whatever you want. Disney World. I wish I wasn't quarantined. We're just playing around at this point. So, and then you can highlight the text and double click your T over here in the corner to bring up your Windows palette. Now, this RGB color space view, if you drag up to the top, it'll give you white. The other thing is white is 0, 0, 0, 0. I'm just kind of lazy and don't ever type 0. I just drag my little cursor into the white zone. So 0, 0, 0, 0, no color is white. And then I'm going to drag this up here. Now, problem is our alignment, right? So the Ohio State University extension, I believe on our template, yes, should be centered. And so we're gonna drag our little box. We want it centered between here and the bug. So you want your box to line up with the bug and then your right guideline on your margin all the way to the right. And then I'm going to go into, I'm gonna drag this up just a little bit because it's driving me crazy. I'm gonna go into paragraph. So again, something that may or may not be on the right-hand side of your toolbar. If it's not, you're gonna go to window, type in tables and paragraph. And that is where you're gonna adjust your alignment of your text. So just like in Microsoft Word, left, center, right, justify. While I have that selected, I'm gonna adjust it in my little box there. I'm going to center it up just a little bit. You can use those cursor keys, your arrow cursors, to make small adjustments if you're not ready to move something across the whole page. And so now we should have some text in our gray box that is white. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so that I can see where I'm at here. Next step is to add a picture. So when you're adding pictures that are going to be big, like my picture is going to be, because it's going to be taking up the top half of my flyer, I do not, especially when you don't know what size the file is, like for the tag and the logo, I knew that those file sizes were going to be relatively appropriate to what I needed for my template. But if you're dropping in an image, and I'll just show you, for example, if I place an image just randomly, random. Don't mind me with my computer organization is a bit sketchy. It's huge, right? It takes up the whole page. And now I've got to figure out how to resize it to fit in the frame where I want it. So I don't advise that. what I advise you to do is actually create your picture frame before you place your picture. So remember how I talked about those images in InDesign are images in a frame. There is a rectangle frame tool over here that I can actually drag out and say, this is where I want my picture to be, period. I don't want it to be anywhere else, and I don't want it to show anywhere else. I want it to be in this frame. So I'm going to drag that out. And now I'm going to go to File, Place, and select my image. And what that does is that puts it into that frame and doesn't allow it to go anywhere else. So now we're going to fit this image in the frame the way we want it. So you'll see when you click on that circle in the middle, it brings up the actual picture edges. And then you can see, so right here, this is where the edges of my picture are, but I'm only showing this portion. It's kind of a built-in crop tool without actually having to crop off parts of the image. So it's kind of cool. I'm going to go to Object, Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally, and see how that works out for me. I like it. It doesn't cut off any of the kids. The edges line up on the left and the right side of my image, but I do want to pull up to the bottom here because I want to cut off that that banner above us that's distracting with the text on it. So I'm just going to use my cursors, my arrow to move that up so that it aligns with the bottom there. That's where I've decided visually I like it. Last step is just to send it to the back. So again, Object, Arrange, Send to Back. And so this is where we're at the top of our image. If you're doing something that's not Ohio State related and you're like, oh, I want to put an image in a circle, you can do the same. Oh, I used the wrong tool. There is circle frames, there's special shape frames. So if you want to make something fancy, when you do that and you place the image, it'll place it in the actual circle shape or the triangle shape or whatever you set up there. All right. So right now I want to just see where I'm at in terms of design. So I'm going to go to View, Fit Page and Window, and then I'm going to hit this Preview button. So it gets rid of all my guidelines so I can see, okay, this is what it's going to look like when it prints at the top. I like it. All right. Next thing we're going to do is add a headline. And the headline is going to go across the columns. If you remember when we talked about design principles, things that are not aligned with the other things stand out. And so if we have the headline break the columns, but then we put some other things in the columns, it'll make this stand out. So see how this is kind of sets off from the rest of this in here. So I'm going to drag out a text box, and same thing, I'm going to go over here to character. For Ohio State, their sans serif font is Proxima Nova, so that's what I'm going to use for my headline. And in this case, I made it about 40 points high. For reference, 72 points is 1 inch. So if you're ever wondering, like, what does this even mean? 72 points is 1 inch. So if I want it to be half an inch, I would do half of 72. I'm not a mathematician, so I can't do that in my head. But that'll give you kind of a reference of how big this is actually going to show up on the page when I print it. All right. So 40 points, Proxima Nova, and then what did I have here? Tech Wizards demo. So Tech Wizards demo. I'm going to keep that right aligned because that's kind of what the brand has set up for a template. And then I'm going to highlight this again so that I can change it to Scarlet. So we're going to go back here to that extended color palette, and I want it to be the actual true Ohio State Scarlet, which is called the root color. So that PMS 200 root Scarlet is 3, 100, 63, and 12. 3, 100, 63, and 12. So I'm going to go over here, double click, 3, 100, 60, whoops, 63, and 12. and that will make it the red color that we want. Don't forget that this Proxima Nova, like Danae talked about the other day, has so many different types, which means you can get I would never recommend a headline in a italic though, but you can get really creative with having different fonts do different things. I've seen where they've, especially in the Be the One campaign, where they've done some stuff like this, where they've had certain words and headlines that are even in the same headline that are italicized versus bold. So you can get pretty fancy with that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add, in the case of my flyer, I added a subhead. I'm not going to take the time to do it today, but same thing. You would draw out your text box, put your text in, decide what font you want. If it's something where you're going to be using same fonts over and over, or even same things over and over. Let's say I have elements that I'm going to do 3 squares or something like that. If you click on the item and then hold Alt, the Alt key, when you hold Alt, you'll see that this comes up with a black and a white arrow. When that black and white arrow is on there and you drag items, it makes copies of them. So that's a quick way to just copy whatever you might want. Let's say I need another image. Boom, done. And once I have that frame, then when I click on that circle, let's say I want to change the image, I just go to File, Place again, and put a different image in there. And the frames are the same size. So that's the Alt key will let you make crazy amounts of copies of everything. All right. So you can add a subhead. Same thing with body copy. You can drag out here, use those columns in the guidelines to do body copy. And the other day I talked about that document that had random text in it. So if you're designing like a newsletter for a county office and you are going ahead and you're putting it together, but you're waiting on your co-educator to get you copy and you need placeholder text, you can actually drag out a text box and go to Type, Fill with placeholder text, and it will fill it with placeholder text so that while you're waiting for the copy from somebody, like if they're sending it to you or they're editing it, you at least you can still keep designing and know, hey, their text is going to go right there. It's also a nice way to give them an idea of how much space they have so they know how many words or lines that they have that they need to fill. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a shape. And the shapes are over here. Rectangle tool, we used it with the gray bar as well. And I'm going to drag it out and I'm going to make it a line. Now, the other day I talked about alignment and the importance of alignment. And I know I already showed you guys how to draw out guides, but InDesign will actually create, you'll see here, there you go, it's creating guides. So it's telling me, those are called snap to guides. It's just assuming that I want these things lined up, and I do. And so I'm going to line them up. Creates consistency in our design. Again, we're going to have to take the stroke off that image. So we're going to go over here to the stroke and apply none. And then we're going to choose what color we want that box to be. So for me, I chose orange. And from a designer's perspective, you might say, why did you choose orange? I chose orange because if you look at my picture, there's several elements of oranges and yellows here in my image, and I felt like that I could pick up and kind of draw the eye. So the other day we talked about leading the eye or repetition, repetitive elements. So I decided there was lots of green or orange in here, and the orange complements the amount of green and kind of balances out there. You could do scarlet, but the only thing the reason I didn't pick scarlet is because if you do scarlet, it's going to compete. You're going to have scarlet here, you're going to have scarlet here, you're going to have scarlet here, and you're going to have scarlet here. And then I have the red here. And so the eye is going to see so much scarlet. You really want it to be an accent color of some type. And so I'm going to go down here to this orange, which is in the brand guidelines. And my code is 172-107. Double click this. And it's going to make it orange. And then you'll see in mine, I added text there. I changed here in my sample, I changed the weights of things. That created that visual hierarchy we talked about the other day. The first thing I want them to read is the date and time. I want it to be easy for them to find, easy to read. The next thing I want them to read, so it's in a little bit smaller font and a little bit lighter weight, is the location. And then the last thing I want them to read is if they have questions, because if I had to pick and choose what things they're going to read on this, so if I give them 15 seconds to read this, the most important things are who, what, when, where, and then why, right? And so questions is important, but if they're going to stop reading it, I at least want them to get this detail and this detail before they stop reading it, right? Because this is something that is important, but if they don't have a question, it's really not critically important to the event. And then the last things I added were the diversity statement, the equity statement, and then also our website there at the bottom. Same thing, those are text tools. You're gonna right align them so that they align down here. Looking at my notes to make sure I told you guys everything. All right. I think that's it for today. I hope that you guys learned something and that you found that to be valuable. Does anybody have any questions or anything they've come across in the past with InDesign that they don't know how to do?
Real quick, Cassie, on your file you have open up here, why don't you, so you said you were gonna right align where the orange box is and stuff, but like, is that, again, back to those design principles, like the reason why you wouldn't align it left in that column?
Are you talking about this?
Right.
Right
You
here?
said you're right aligning instead of like having it all left aligned and everyone reading left to right. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, so this is kind of what we consider a graphic element. So this is treated more like an image than actual text. It's really up to you. It's not gonna hurt if I left align it. I mean, it still looks the same. What would be bad though is if you did this, which I've seen people do. If you had body copy, right, and then had left alignment here and right alignment here, because now the eye says, are these paired? I don't know if these are paired, if this flows into this or if this doesn't flow into this. So, but because this is considered more like an image with text in it, you can really do whatever you want. Center, it's not great, but it's not horrible either. I don't know. So that's where you get into those discretionary, it's kind of up to the designer and up to you as to what you think works or fits. I just felt like for me, there was left alignment wise, I have all this left aligned, so it's pretty heavy on the left. So I was trying to balance it. So we talked about balance and proximity. So if you have all this on the left, this at least this gives these things over here some alignment on the right, because these have to align right at the bottom per the branding.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? So file save to save it, and it'll save as an InDesign file, which is an INDD file. If you hit save as, oh no, I'm lied, not save as, file export. So let's say I'm done with this. I want to convert it into a PDF so that I can send it to Uniprint, or so that I can print it in the office, send it to my office associate, and they don't have InDesign. If you go to export will allow you to pick all those different things. So JPEG, if you're doing something for Facebook, PDF on there? Yeah, PDF, print, or interactive. So those are for some forms or things that you're putting on the web. And then save, and that'll allow you to export it. It'll actually bring up, I think, some PDF settings. Yep. So if you know that you're just going to use it to print in the office, high quality print is fine. If it's something you're going to send to Uniprint, press quality is probably better. Something that's going online, smallest file size is always best. There we go. And then sometimes, if any of you have ever opened an InDesign file where it says the links are broken, that's because these things, like this image here, is not embedded in InDesign. It's just there. The computer is making a connection between where that file is on my computer and where I have it placed in InDesign. So if you ever are needing to send an InDesign file to someone that has images in it, or elements like we have here, or fonts, and they need the actual original InDesign file, which is the case for some of our promotional people that we work with, where they need the actual design file, you're actually going to not go to save or export, you're going to go to package. And what that's going to do is that's going to package all the fonts you used and all the images you used into a folder, so that when you send it to those people, they have the links and their computer can still reference them. If not, what's going to happen is they're going to open the file and it's not, that image is not going to be there, or it's not going to be high quality because they can't, the software can't reference the original file. I hope that makes sense. That's a very short explanation of how packaging works. But again, that's something you just need to worry about if somebody's asking you for the actual InDesign file. If you're doing PDF or JPEG, you'll be okay. You don't need to do that. Any other questions? Quiet group today. They're like, that was a lot.
Yeah, that definitely was a lot. Go ahead and stop the recording now. So thank you very much, Cassie.
You're welcome.